Interesting start.
Yeah, he's got the lights on the bottom. Obviously, Tylo's really one of the people pushing the envelope for tech conjuring. Placement on the
Okay.
thumb earlier was could have been way better. Like right here, the placement on the thumb, it's got to be
Yeah, there's a
perfect
little
every
bit
single
of
time.
logic.
The logic, yeah, and that's a complexity with this style is getting that logic with the all the lights on the bottom, dude.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah, that change there was pretty nasty.
Yeah, I like that.
Wow, he like clicked everything through the compression wave.
Yeah, yeah. So, a little bit of not finishing that roll.
Yeah, the rolls can be a little bit difficult with this setup. A little bit of shakes here. I wish he was closer already.
Yeah, the depth could use a little work. That's a really cool move right there,
Oh,
playing
wow.
with that single light.
I have a really big suggestion, but I think it's something that we'll talk about after the show. Placement on the thumbs again. Those placement on the thumbs are a big distractor.
Okay, we can see getting lost a little bit in the clicks there.
Yeah, there you kind of have to get ready for it, for those clicks in that certain thing. I almost feel like, okay, I almost feel like knowing when the clicks happen is actually like versus like overlaying the music. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like maybe that definitely. There's a discussion there. The placement on the cluster at the end there was not completed. It feels like more placement, if anything. It's a little bit of a stiffness in there, in that rotation.
Okay, a little bit of an awkward pause before that.
Is it the awkward pause to set up like a little shake into the musicality?
Yeah, I feel like there could be more done with it.
That was pretty fucking nasty. Like, when the hell did that all turn white?
A little bit of an awkward dial position.
Well, interesting. The pointer changing to pink. I'm not sure if it quite works in that position. And here, there's the connectivity with those finger tuts need to be closer. So he'll do a couple ear tracing, right?
Yes.
These are, I wonder, okay. These are all really clean, and for the most part filler. I wonder if there's a more higher value way of doing filler. That was pretty freaking good. Pretty nuts. Immediately, I feel like Tylo's placements could use a lot of work. But you're kind of like at that, it's kind of hard because of the light placements, right? So like this is a really like tough decision, but there comes sacrifice within this whole style, right?
Yes.
There's a sacrifice no matter what, because the light to light contact is so risky and it's so hard. Like, and I don't know if Tylo ever ends up like joining up like a competition or whatever, right? But let's just say this, okay? If you're going to be doing that style, right, execution is probably going to be your worst enemy simply because of light placements, right? Because most people aren't going to... Most people can appreciate what you're doing, the level of technicality, but the truth is that the light placements play a big factor in your presentation, your execution, that it's too hard to unsee to be like, oh yo, that the conjuring is that high level, let me just give it to him because of the conjuring high level. No, the fact is that there are plenty of bad placements when you when you have connections, okay? And then comes the level, and then you have to like put into perspective like the and this is only specifically for competitions, okay? This is only specifically
Yeah.
for competitions. If it's just a general thing, then really good, but still, the placements need to be like even more pristine.
Yep.
Pristine, okay? And then so like just kind of a mindset, right, as a judge is it's hard to unsee that stuff compared to someone who's doing a more simpler show that has perfect execution because you're sacrificing complexity for cleanliness.
Yep.
And most times, if you're not pristine all the time in cleanliness, you're probably not going to win. And that's the weakness within that style, only within a competition setting. Only within a competition setting.
Yeah, I think when it comes to having your lights on the bottom, right, it it like subconsciously activates this perspective that all of a sudden, because things are already weird, like to see, right? Because we're so used to seeing lights on the tops of our fingers, right? When you see lights on the bottom, since not as many people conjure and have that kind of southpaw style, um, it like activates your brain to automatically start looking for the problems, and then that execution starts to stick out far more than someone who
Yes.
might be slightly messing up just with their lights on top.
Yes, yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's like when you're in like a this is only specific for competition. I'm gonna say that one more time. But
Mm.
when you're, I feel like when you're in that mindset, you're looking. It's easier to spot the execution errors or the placement errors rather than just the complexity of it all. Right? You're not gonna see someone who's at that top level caliber. Like if you mess up, that's like a big stain. And I know many of you guys have
Oh,
heard me say this many times, but if you have multiple stains, then it's really hard to unsee the placements, right?
I mean,
It,
I'd say think about it like a white shirt, right? The second that you drop a piece of food on it, like it,
Ketchup.
some people, yeah, ketchup, right? It's like, oh, I can't wear that shirt anymore because now that's all people are going to see is that ketchup
Yes,
stain on my white
right.
shirt.
Like what? Like right here,
Oh,
I'm
it's
on stream.
crazy.
I'm on stream right now, and like these are all really good. And I think Tylo goes slow because he knows this. Because he knows that his pristine, like his placements have to be pristine. Like if I were to give like a percentage on like how clean this is, I would probably give like I don't know, probably like a 75 for the most part. Like
So
like
let's say it on a scale of 10, just like it's a scorecard,
yeah,
right?
like a 7
So you're saying like
probably.
a 7?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
I
is
think that's
really
where my
good.
head was at.
Which is
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good for
absolutely.
conjuring. When you're doing like high caliber, this is extremely high caliber. Like the concepts of it all. Like
Agreed.
you're gonna have to get to a point, and this is just generally speaking, right? Like you have to get to a point, like if you're like where you're working extra hard for the cleanliness for things like conjure tech, bro. Who else is doing conjure tech at this caliber, right? Not many
Not
people
many
are
people.
people doing this. So this is basically future as fuck. But this placement right here, like that placement right here is yeah, like that's like the ketchup stain, right? Like it's gotta be like tip to tip, not
So,
not nail to light. He has like different finger to different finger conjures, which I think is
mhm.
very high level. Like different because like okay, like intermediate or like beginner to intermediate, it's usually like pointer to pointer conjures, right? So like pointer, throw it up, turn off, turn on, pointer to pointer. But conjures within every single finger, like done intentfully, that's freaking like if you're chaining it up to, that's high level, right? And I could
Yeah, and
see the complexity in it because like just having to physically press the light, like that's its own level of
it's a dexterity.
it's
It's a
dexterity.
dexterity check,
Yes,
you know?
dexterity check.
And I will say, as a as a positive note for all the things we're saying, I really like the integration of like color theory play where he's got like this white set with the pink pointers, and he's like specifically using them for different things, and like having these pointers be this guide while then bringing it into this whole white set for the rest of it. And it kind of like, the pink gives that illumination to the rest of the set. I think it was a really good idea.
Yeah, it's very creative, right? Look at that form at 47.
Yeah, this form I had a little bit of issue with.
How come?
Okay, so we can see the pinky bent in, and it's at a weird bend. I would
It's at a
have really
45.
liked to see. Well, it's at a 45, but it's almost like his first knuckle, right? Like here is kind of like it's like bent a little bit. And
Yeah.
I think that was like on account of this being a difficult position to get into, like mid show, and him not feeling maybe entirely comfortable with this angle yet, as you can see his middle finger, it's not falling in line with the base of the pointer finger, right? Like when you have this angle right here, it's really going to change the perspective if this line on the pointer finger is kind of not in line with the middle finger all the way. You see how
Hmm.
that middle finger is kind of like up towards the middle of
Yes.
the second
Oh,
knuckle,
you're saying that
right?
row, right? Yeah, that row, that middle
Right.
is like
This
kind of a
needs to
little
be
bit up.
straight,
Oh,
and it's
that's
kind of here.
holy crap, bro. That's like hella nitpicky. But we need that, yeah. No, but yeah, no, it definitely plays into like how and maybe it's because like I don't know if it's like a genetic thing, right? But
It's
like
possible.
look at like the because the light is on the bottom, he has like that diagonal like this diagonal form. Um and I kind of like it though. You know what I mean? I kind of like it, but it's
Okay.
not completely like
So
straight. I want to see like how does he actually use it? But is it because we're in the movement?
I think it's because it's like not held there long enough.
Yeah, and there's like a little bit of shakes. There's like actually a little bit of shakes when he does the compression there. So like I would say to just grind this specific compression in this form over and over and over. Just that
Yes.
specific form over and over and over. I was gonna suggest that when we're in this form, and especially for like conjuring, okay, like what's very special, I think about conjuring is that you could play more into illumination concepts where like
Hmm.
when you have like this form there's I would suggest to play with the illumination if you can get into to this form. Like let me show. I think this is very like underrated. Like you don't see a lot of illumination in tech forms with conjuring where like if you're in the form. Okay, but like you play with that like the illumination of the form and then you change, right? So if you like conjure, conjure, right? And then you play with the illumination of showing what part of the palm is lit up. Because you can kind of see that like there if I'm closer on contact, there's like a small dot, right? But then when I'm wider, you see how it expands. So you're playing with literally the shape of the light. You're shaping the light. And
Yeah.
it becomes really interesting when you have like tech forms like that, and that's something you don't really see often. So you see how like he goes into the cluster form and then he has to like sit back. You see how he sit backs and repositions.
Yeah, he repositions his whole body,
Why?
arms and all.
You see what I'm
Well,
saying? It's that setup. That setup is not clean. It's the setup into. It's because he's repositioning his body, right? He's probably, I don't know if he's sitting
well, yeah.
down or kneeling.
When no, when you go to 51, like 52, you can see that he's kind of in this position where he's almost diagonal to the camera because he wants to have that hand that's doing the fan be the main focus.
Yeah,
And it when he's repositioning, I think I think you're right. It is probably because he's on his knees, or sitting down on something. that it kind of just makes that transition very, very apparent of his body versus if he were standing, it's a lot easier to move your body while isolating your hands.
Right.
And I think that's the other thing, right? We see a little bit of there's a lack of isolation in his hands and the form that he's trying to present,
Yeah.
and that's why it moves with all of his body, and then it sticks out
Yeah.
because you're seeing it move at the same rate that his body
Look
is.
at 54 to 55. You see how he does this extra pulse to be like, "Yo guys, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the
This is the
form.
shape that's
This is the
locked in.
yeah." So
Yeah.
that is a symptom of musicality in my opinion. Or like you're trying to get on track with the music. Like, I'm actually going to turn on actually. It's like boom boom bap. Yeah, see he's catching up with the music. Bap, right? So there's a musicality problem here. And maybe it's because it's so technical and he has to emphasize the cluster form and he has to do that bounce. I know this bounce all too well. I do this bounce myself before. Like, so there's oh man, it's so tough. I mean, you have like this crazy form, you're in your setup, but then you add that extra bounce to be like, okay guys, I'm done with the setup, here's the sequence. It needs to be the transition is the setup to the sequence. Like you're doing your like if you're going into like this position, right? And then you're like it's kind of weird. You know what I'm saying? It's like an extra step because you're trying to like catch up with musicality.
So I'm somewhat speculating, but I think what it is this position that he was in prior. Um, sorry, like
Yeah.
this position that he's in prior, it's such a mental strain if you haven't drilled this type of position like thousands of times that I think when he's in the midst of the transition into that kind of cluster, and I'm not entirely sure what the cluster is. It's kind of like a, and I'm sure you've experienced this at some point in your gloving. When you come up with a new move and you want to kind of put it out there or put it into a video, you're thinking more about the move than the music. And then
Yeah.
once you're kind of out of that move, it's like all of the music comes rushing back to you.
Yes,
And then
yes,
you are
yes.
playing that catch up game, like you were
Yes.
saying.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think that kind of leaves like that's a great segue to I think one of the biggest problems in the show is the musicality. I don't know. Like I feel like the lyrics are kind of lost. Right? He's kind of in this slow flow and like I'm listening to the clicks to the music and I feel like they don't
Yeah,
match. I feel like the clicks to be should could be to the music, you know what I'm saying? Like because like
agreed.
is it the musicality within the clicks or like because the move is the conjure. So then that means that the move is to the conjure's to the beat, but it's not on the beat, is it? Like, it's kind of hard to tell or kind of hard to hear. Yeah, like it kind of is like off. Like I can't tell if the click is to the beat. And this is
Right.
this is what I wanted to say earlier. It was like, do you think that it is probably it's kind of like anti-meta, but like, do you think it's more uh, beneficial for him to not overlay the music so you can hear the clicks? Because like when you hear the clicks, I think as a Glover, there's actually something a lot more uh interesting, yeah,
Impressive.
impressive about it. You know what I mean? Rather than not hearing the clicks.
I think that's a case by case basis, right? Because I think the clicks also kind of diminish some of the illusion, right? Because it's like you
Yeah,
hear the
yeah,
click, you know what's coming. You may not know exactly which fingers he's clicking, but it's almost like you're now anticipating to see either light or no light as
yeah.
soon
It's
as
a
you hear the
tough one.
click.
Yeah,
So it's like, yes, it's impressive to hear the clicks, especially when someone's clicking, multiple lights at a time. You're like, holy shit, that must be extremely difficult. And it is. But at the same time, is it worth risking losing someone's interest because of the fact that they are now dialed into exactly what you're doing and there is no surprise factor? And I feel like a lot of conjuring not entirely, but it does rely on that kind of like you didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like I mean, well, yeah, I mean, you get that a lot through like impacting, right? It's like you don't expect
Yes.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a really interesting um point where it's like the as an audience it's like you when you see a conjure it's like okay you kind of expect some of the clicks here and there, like it's like you kind of lose that sense of especially when you've watched Glowy for a long time, you sometimes lose that sense of excitement, especially when the conjures are pretty much the same conjures you've seen all the time. But that's a
Yes.
different point. But i think I think in the fashion that Tylo is doing it, it's not really in that fashion because he's doing like really interesting forms. At least
That's
for
fair.
me, you know? Um but like I mean again, like even at this part, look at like one. Okay, no, that's good. That's good. It's 124? Yeah, like 125. 125, bro. This is right here. This placement right here. Boom. The thumbs. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you just like you all that effort in the tech conjures, but you have this placement. It's all out the window already. You
And
know?
and we kind of get like and this is even a little bit more nitpicky, but just the placement of the fists, right? Like you have his right hand where you can almost see the
Yeah.
majority of his fingers and it's almost like fully facing you. And then you have his left hand, which is kind of like pointed towards the ground. And he gets kind of caught up in this position where his
Yeah.
knuckles are touching on his pointer fingers, but the entirety of the shape is non-symmetrical.
Yeah.
And I think that takes away from just the feeling of, there's like a certain satisfaction that I think a lot of Glovers get, and I get myself when watching a show and everything just lines up.
Right,
All the
right, right.
forms, all the shapes,
Everything perfect.
when you have your hands like this and like one thumb isn't like off, like that type of minutia and detail can really make or break, I think, someone's feelings about how good or how bad a light show really is. And having that be such a center point of like, he's right here in your face and like this fist is kind of pointing at the ground and this fist is
Yeah.
kind of pointing towards you, like
Yeah.
it breaks that like trance that you can be in when you're lost
Yeah.
in a really good light show.
All right there. Completion at 201. 2 minutes to 201. He gets into like this box. He didn't complete the box yet. Boom, boom, bat right there. Like it's very in and out. Like there isn't a
Oh yeah,
like right there. Like I didn't get to see the box yet, and this is
and he's kind of in this
the symptom
box.
of the floaty esque type style. But uh, he has the dexterity though. You know, he has the
Yeah,
dexterity to get into some pretty crazy forms.
it definitely
Um,
seems like it. So one other thing I want to talk about that I see, especially in watching the show, and this could just be a symptom of the positioning that he was in, or just being, I guess, more uncomfortable going to the camera. I don't know how often he records or how often he's throwing to a camera, but and this is a symptom that I see in lots of Glovers. I feel like it seems like he has, long arms, right? But
yeah,
we're kind of always gloving like on our chest, and it's like that the symptom of like I glove a lot to myself and like I'm always looking at my own hands and yeah, and I just feel like there's such a loss of depth that could be used and such a loss of like space that could be used when you're pigeon toeing yourself to being on your chest or being in this kind of like mid range. Like I want to see his arms extended all the way, especially when he's doing like those
yeah.
cluster
Oh,
combinations and stuff.
yeah,
Like there would be so much more room for him to work with and so many more concepts to add in if he's using that full arm length extension and then
Mm,
being able to also bring it back in, right? That form that we talked about with this kind of like fan that's going on, right? Like that, I understand it being close to your body because of the nature of the move,
yeah.
right? But as soon as he gets into that cluster combination, it should be arms out. You know,
Right, right, right.
it should be spread in your face. And I know you said this when we were watching, right? Like you already had wished he was closer to the camera at that point. And I think that's a symptom of having that kind of like it's almost like a safe space that you're gloving in.
Yeah, 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 yeah. In terms of like, yeah, I actually had a conversation about this a while back, but then like there's like this and then there's like that and there's like it's
Yes.
a totally different vibe and that does play into
Yes.
use of space, right? And I would imagine that conjuring like usually actually wait, conjuring is very it's very far usually. Like traditional conjuring is
Yeah.
very far, but he's kind of taken the different approach where because it's tech conjuring, he kind of has to go close. So now it's just combining, adding every level of depth, right? That's probably gonna add more to his illusions, like doing different tech conjures from like even at the arm.
Yeah,
Like
that's
this is a
yes.
possibility, right? Like, and it's trippy
Yes.
because you have this whole length versus and it's you don't have as much space to work with, and
Yeah.
it's a whole showmanship aspect. But yeah, I think we spent a lot of time on Talos show, pretty much just the placements, maybe working with some illumination, some of the shakier forms, right? It's got to work on the shakier forms, and I think the musicality aspect all definitely needs some improvement. But yeah, very who I don't even know anyone else who's like on that level of tech conjuring, I'll be completely honest. Big shout outs to all current Gloving Academy Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much for all the support. Seriously, guys. The Patreon's got weekly educational and never before seen content. So if you want to take your gloving to the next level and learn from me, come join the Gloving Academy Patreon.